The Maral continues. Over Perek Haroya, in Masechtes Brochus, the Gemara tells us, Tana Rabbanon Meiser bin Lazokn. There was a story with Hillel Lazokn Shei Baba Derech. He was traveling, V'shama Kol Tzvocha, and he heard a sound of screaming coming from the town. V'ama, and he said, Muftachani, I am guaranteed she'ein ze b'toich beisi. This sound, this scream did not come from my house. And the Gemara says, Olav HaKosov Oimer, on him the pasuk says, Mishmur ro lo yira. He's not afraid from hearing a bad shmur. Nochen liboi b'tuach b'Hashem. His heart, his trust is in Hashem. And what does the Gemara say on my Rava Hai Kro? Mereisha l'sefer midrash, m'sefer l'reisha midrash. This pasuk could be learned both ways. Meaning, Mereisha l'sefer, Mishmur ro lo yira. Why is he not afraid of a shmur ro? Mishim de nochen liboi b'tuach b'Hashem. Because he has b'tochen. And now you can read it in reverse. M'sefer l'reisha. Mishum de nochen liboi b'tuach b'Hashem. Because he has b'tochen Hashem, he's never afraid of a shmur ro. Says the Maral v'dovazeh. Why is this that a person who has bitachon b'Hashem could never be afraid of a shmur ro? And obviously, what's the Maral's question here? The Maral's question is, we live in a world that sometimes bad things happen. We all know that at one point everyone is going to die. So how do you explain this mishmur ro, that a person who has bitachon never hears a shmur ro? Says the Maral, because there's two very different things. Shmur ro is kashu shemea dova pisoim inyan shehura. The idea of a besura ro Rachmana litzlan is that suddenly, boom, you suddenly hear a very terrible thing happen. V'zeh ein ro lemi shehu boiteach b'Hashem sheyishma shmua pisoim b'pam echad. It is never okay to think that a person who has real bitachon will ever in his or her life hear a shmur ro that just happened, boom, a terrible thing happened. Someone who has full bitachon, says the Maral, this will never happen to. It's just not possible for a person who has bitachon b'Hashem, who, as the Maral explained, has a shield of protection from Olam Haba, which means he's not affected by a bad muzzle, he's not affected by things in this world, like sudden things that could never happen to him. If it was not a shmur ro, but rather rak hoya bebeisa arama atma'at, this other rabbi, it was not a shmur ro, but someone wasn't feeling well, and after a while they felt worse, and then they were sick, Rahman litzlan, and then they died, or something like that. That could happen even to a Baal Bitachon. V'kol davar k'moizeh nasa b'zman, because says the Maral, that depends on time. That's a thing that happened with time. People go through different things with time. And since it didn't just spring on him, this terrible shmur ro, but rather it happened slowly, this the bitachon will not protect against. Why? Because Hashem created a world that also has bad in it. Hashem created a world that also people have to go through suffering. So again, says the Maral, if something happens slowly, then even a person that has bitachon might have to suffer through that. Of course, as we learned in the Choyves Havavos and the Sefer Maspik and the Kadakemach, that their level of pain will be completely different than someone who has a lack of bitachon. Because even whilst they're going through it, they'll feel the Yad Hashem with them, and they'll get out of the tzara faster and easier, and they won't be harmed and damaged in any serious way. However, says the Maral, when it comes to something sudden, something like a shmur ro, there's a scream in a house because something terrible happened, says the Maral, a Baal Bitachon will never face something like that. Impossible. Because something that does not happen over time, says the Maral, that is not part of the regular teva of the olam hazeh, ki olam hazeh hu tachas hazman. Because the way the world runs is only with time. Things happen slowly over time. So if something happens slowly over time, you can say that even the Baal Bitachon might have to go through it. But if it's a shmur ro, which means it happened suddenly, which means it didn't happen slowly with time, it means it was not a regular anhag of this world, and therefore there is no way that a Baal Bitachon will ever face that.